Hello and welcome back everyone. Today we will be solving Cambridge O-Level Physics past paper from October-November 2024. This is paper 1 variant 1 where we are given 40 questions and we have to solve them all within 1 hour. So one thing to note is that we will be taking the acceleration of free fall to be 9.8. So let's get started. Question 1. A crane lifts a heavy load at a steady rate. Which unit is suitable for the output power of the crane's motor? So since we are finding the power, we know that the unit of power is watt, which is symbolized by W. So option B, kilowatt, is correct. Question number 2. Which statement about mass is correct? So we know that mass is a scalar quantity, so it's either option A or B. And the unit of mass is kilogram, so option A is correct. Question number 3. The bob of a simple pendulum is pulled horizontally by a force that is equal to the weight W of the bob. Which diagram shows the angle between the pendulum thread and the vertical? So the angle between the pendulum thread and the vertical is nothing, just the resultant force after two equal forces W are acting at 90 degrees to each other on the bob. So since these two forces are acting at 90 degrees and they are equal, the resultant force will be right in between the two forces. So we are splitting 90 degrees in half, so 90 divided by 2 is 45. So the angle will be 45 degrees. So the answer is option C. Number 4. A student takes 20 minutes to walk from X to Y at a speed of 3 km per hour. She turns 90 degrees at Y and walks at a speed of 4 km per hour for 15 minutes to reach Z. What is her average speed from X to Z? So since we are getting the average speed, we don't have to think about the direction. So the formula for average speed is total distance divided by total time. So first we will be calculating the total distances from both journeys. So for journey 1, the time is 20 minutes and the speed is 3 km per hour. So since the time is in minutes and the speed is in kilometer per hour, we will first convert the minute to hours. So 20 minutes is 20 divided by 60 hour, multiply by 3 km to get the distance. So the distance will be 1 km. And for journey 2, the time is 15 minutes and the speed is 4 km. So again that will be 1 km. So the total distance is 2 km and the total time is 20 plus 15, which is 35 minutes out of 60. So 2 divided by 35 multiplied by 60 will be 3.428 km per hour. So we can take option B as our answer. Question 5. A car is at rest by a red traffic light. When the light changes to green, the car starts moving. The graph represents the motion of the car. The car has constant acceleration. Which quantity is plotted on the x-axis and which quantity is plotted on the y-axis? So one thing we should all know is that the x-axis always has the independent term. So here the independent term is time. So the x-axis will be time. So the answer will be either C or D. Now since we are getting the constant acceleration, the y-axis cannot be speed, because if the acceleration is constant, the gradient of the speed time graph should have been a straight line. But here we can see that the gradient is increasing. Therefore the answer is C. The x-axis is time and the y-axis is distance. Question number 6. an object falls without air resistance, its position at equal time intervals is shown by a sequence of dots. Which sequence of dots is correct? Now in the question we can see that the air resistance can be ignored. Therefore, the only force acting on the object will be the gravitational force. Therefore, the acceleration will be constant. Now, when the acceleration is constant, the speed increases per unit time. So, when the speed keeps on increasing, it means that the distance covered by the object per second will be larger. So option A, you can see that the distance keeps on decreasing the more time passes. So option A will be not the answer. In option B, you can see that the speed first increases and then decreases and then increases again. So once again, B is not the option. In C, the distance remains constant per unit time. So this is also not the answer. And in D, you can see that the distance was first smaller, but then it kept on increasing. So option D is the correct answer. Question 7. Some gas trapped in a container is compressed at constant temperature by a piston. Which property of the gas does not change? Now, when a gas is compressed, the particles become closer together. So the density of the particles will increase, and the particles will keep on colliding with each other and the wall more frequently. Therefore, the frequency of particle collision will also increase. And the pressure will also increase because the particles collide with the wall of the container more. And the only property that will not change will be mass. And the property that will not change is mass because the amount of particles in the container will remain constant. Therefore, option B is correct. Question 8. A car has a weight of 8,000 Newton. What is the mass of the car? So this is a pretty easy question. 8,000 Newton is the weight of the car, and weight is equal to mass multiplied by gravity. So weight is 8,000 and the gravity should be taken as 9.8 as we had seen before, and therefore the mass will be 8,000 divided by 9.8, which is 816.3. So we can round this off to 820, which is option B. Question 9. A lorry is traveling along a straight horizontal road. The constant driving force on the lorry is 80 kilonewton and the total resistive force is 20 kilonewton. Which row describes the motion of the lorry and gives the resultant force acting on it? So let's draw this simple free body diagram. The forward force is 80 and the backward force is 20. Therefore, the resultant force acts in the forward direction and its magnitude is 60 kilonewton. Therefore, the resultant force is 60 kilonewton and the motion of the lorry will be acceleration since it is moving in the forward direction. So option A is correct. Question number 10. As a cyclist uses the brakes on a bicycle, energy is transferred from the kinetic store to the thermal store. Which causes the transfer of energy? Now, since heat energy is being produced, the transfer of energy is due to friction. Now, since the cyclist is using the brakes, the transfer of energy will be due to friction between the brakes, between the bicycle wheels and the road. Therefore, option A is correct. Question number 11. The extension of a spring is measured as the load stretching it is increased. The graph shows the results. Which point is the spring's limit of proportionality? Now, the limit of proportionality can be found using Hooke's law, and the limit of proportionality is the last point at which the extension load graph has a constant gradient. So here the last point where there is a constant gradient is option B. So option B is the correct answer. Question 12. A satellite orbits the Earth. What is the direction of the force on the satellite causing this circular motion? Now, when a satellite is orbiting the Earth, the force is centripetal force and it is acting towards the center of the Earth. Therefore, option D is correct. Let's move on to question 13. A uniform beam is pivoted at its center and balanced by 3 weights as shown. What is distance x? Now this is a simple question from Principle of Moments chapter, where we know that the sum of clockwise moments is equal to the sum of anticlockwise moments. So the total clockwise moment here is 30 multiplied by 2, and the total anticlockwise moment here is 3 multiplied by 5 plus x plus 5 multiplied by 2. So 2x plus 10 plus 15 is equal to 60, therefore 2x is equal to 35, and x is equal to 17.5, which is option A. Question 14. A piece of card of uniform thickness and density is suspended freely from a horizontal pin. The diagram shows the card at rest. Which cross is the center of gravity of the card? Now, since the card is larger at the bottom, we can say that C is the center of gravity of the card. Question number 15. Trolley X of mass 2 kg is moving to the right at 2 meter per second and trolley Y of mass 1 kg is moving to the left at 1 meter per second. The trolleys collide and stick together. The collision takes a total time of 0.2 seconds. What is the average force acting on trolley X during the collision? So this is a question from Momentum chapter, and we know that the total sum of momentum before the collision is equal to the total sum of momentum after the collision. The sum of momentum and the formula for momentum is mass multiplied by velocity. Now the momentum before the collision is 2 multiplied by 2 plus minus 1 multiplied by 1. We are using minus 1 because the trolleys are moving in opposite direction. And since the trolleys are sticking together after the collision, we will consider that both of them are moving at the same velocity. So the momentum after the collision is 3 multiplied by v. When we solve for v, we see that v is equal to 3. Now since we are finding the average force acting on trolley X, we're taking the rate of change of momentum for trolley X only. So the momentum before the collision for trolley X was 4 and the momentum after the collision was 2. And the time was 0.2 seconds for the collision. So the force is 10 Newton, which is option B. Question 16. An object of mass 5 kg is moving at a constant speed. It has 10 joules of kinetic energy. What is the speed of the object? We have the mass and the amount of kinetic energy. So we can just use the formula for kinetic energy, which is half mv square. So kinetic energy is equal to 10 is equal to half multiplied by 5 multiplied by v squared, and v is equal to 2 meter per second. Question 17. A wind-up radio is used in areas where mains electricity is not available. A person winds a spring in the radio using the handle. When the spring unwinds, it makes a small coil rotate in a magnetic field. Which energy transfer is not useful for this radio? So in here, elastic potential energy to kinetic energy is useful. Kinetic energy to thermal energy is wasted energy. Therefore, option B is correct. And chemical energy to elastic potential energy is also useful, and kinetic energy to sound energy is also useful. So option B is our answer. Question 18. Energy is transferred in a filament lamp at a rate of 60 watt. The lamp wastes energy at a rate of 46 watt. Which ratio is used to calculate the efficiency of the lamp? Now we know that the efficiency is equal to the useful output power divided by the total input power. Now the total input power is 60 watt and the useful output power is the total input minus the wasted output. So 60 minus 46 divided by 60, that is 14 divided by 60. And that is option B, which is our answer. Question 19. A liquid is held in a cylindrical container. The diameter of the base of the cylinder is D. The mass of the liquid is m and its depth is h. Which expression gives the pressure due to the liquid on the bottom of the cylinder? Now we know that the pressure due to a liquid is h rho g. But when we check the options, we see that we have to write the pressure in terms of pi and d. So let's try to derive the equation for pressure from pi and d. So h multiplied by rho multiplied by g is the pressure and rho is the density. Now the density is mass divided by the volume. The mass is m and the volume is pi r square h, since this is a cylinder. So h multiplied by m divided by pi r square h multiplied by g. Now we are cancelling out h to get m divided by pi r square multiplied by g. Now since we are using d and since we are using the diameter and not the radius, we're writing r is equal to d divided by 2 and putting that into the equation. So m divided by pi d divided by 2 squared multiplied by g. That will be 4 mg divided by pi d square, which is option C. Question 20. The diagram shows an instrument that is used to measure the atmospheric pressure. So this is a barometer. The density of mercury is 1.4 multiplied by 10 to the power 4 kg per meter cube. What is the atmospheric pressure? So the atmospheric pressure can be calculated by rho. P is equal to h rho g. So this is a simple calculation. H is 760 millimeter, which we have to convert in meters to keep the units constant across all quantities. So 760 millimeter is 0.76 meter multiplied by rho, which is 1.4 into 10 to the power 4 multiplied by g, which will be take as 9.8. Now when you use a calculator, you'll get the answer 104,272 pascals, which is 104 kilopascal. And therefore option C is our answer.